How is that? I see somebody's. Ryan said no audio. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Uh, so basically, what I was talking about was I was in Cleveland. I flew in late last night, and I left Thursday. Thank you, Mario, Ryan. So, can you guys hear me now? John says it too. No audio. All right. Ryan says we got it. Awesome. Okay. So let me start over since you guys didn't hear what I was saying. You just saw talking mouth. Good. Thanks, John. Got it. It's good now. Good. So, yeah. So after the show last Tuesday, I worked Wednesday on the 69 Camaro and on the exhaust system, and Leo brought some parts for the Studebaker, so the Studebaker is now in the shop. And then I flew out Thursday for Cleveland, and I got back late last night, so I only had today to get some more work done. So I will not have any pictures of projects in the shop this show. Next week we'll definitely have some stuff, but I was able to put a video together for TIG welding for the home guy. Really good information if you're doing stainless headers, exhaust, coolant pipes, or anything else that you would want to make out of stainless, and you would normally have to back purge. I got a trick that fixes that. I've been doing it for about 25 years, and works real well. So we'll show that video in a little bit. What else did I say? Oh, how's the new time frame for everybody? I got a couple comments on the polls. It said later would be better, so we're gonna give this a shot. If not, we can move it back a little bit more to 7. I don't think I can move it much farther back than 7, but we'll see how that works out. I think it should be good. Hopefully, it gives everybody a chance to get home from work and get settled in, or out in the shop, or whatever you're doing, however you listen to this stream. So hopefully that works out good. Everybody let me know. And I'm working on a timer. Today I started the cover screen at 5 minutes before, and my goal was to have a 5-minute timer. I was not able to get that done. I'm still not that computer literate to figure out all these nuances, but I'm working through it. So next week we should have a timer, and then we'll do like I did tonight, is right at the starting time. Tonight was 6:45. We started the show, so try to cut down on the nonsense at the beginning. Try to get right into it, and so we'll do that. Let me know if that works for you. You know, you can always jump on the polls. If you haven't been able to find the polls, if you go to YouTube Landis Performance to the main page, you'll see on there's a bunch of tabs. Well, actually they don't have tabs, it's just got words, but it'll say like videos and playlist, and one of them will say community. Under community is where polls and comments and stuff like that is. So feel free to go to those polls and put in what you think about the different stuff that I have questions on there. I'm gonna try to add some more to it. And thank you to everybody that's watching and all the subscribers that are on the channel. I got notification over the weekend from YouTube that we now can do super chat thanks, and we can make a join button. I guess that's what it's called. But what those things do is super chat is something that on the chats you can pay $1 or $2 or whatever you want, and you'll have there'll be different you'll get a box around your name, and you get an icon to signify you. I'm gonna work on that stuff. I have to design all that stuff, but I'm gonna work on that stuff. And then there's a thanks button that'll be on the videos where you can say give a thanks, and then a small donation if you feel it warranted. And then there's going to be a club membership, a join button, and what we're going to do with that, I haven't figured everything out on that. That's something that's, I don't know, it's kind of weird. It's a monthly group fee, a dues so to speak. And there'll be a couple different levels, and from what they say in the instructions, what I'll do is I'll probably put some different things, so different levels of membership will get different privileges. Anybody that's in the membership would get first sneak peeks of any videos that come out before they go out live, just things like that. So I'll probably put some more polls out, and we can kind of figure out as a group what would be good and what would not. Just to let you know, any of the monies that come in, first of all, YouTube takes 30%, but any of that stuff is going to be used for the channel. I'm not putting it in my pocket or nothing like that. I'm not trying to make a living out of this. What I want to do is get better equipment and stuff like that, and maybe eventually nest egg some of that money to the point where we can buy a project car and build it on the channel, and then go from there. Go out and do some, maybe make a burnout car or something like that, or autocross car or something, and then we'll build it all up on the show, and then use it a bunch of times. Maybe then raffle it off or auction off or sell it, and then use that money to do the next project. And so we can start out at a bargain basement. Swap meet parts and everything, build on the first one, and then maybe get into some builds where we actually get some nice parts on and get really build a nice vehicle. But anyway, just wanted to let you guys know that that's coming up. And again, all of that is going to be, all monies are going to be used for the channel. I'm not putting anything in my pocket. I got a shop. I make money. I don't need to do that. I just want to be able to produce more stuff to put on the channel for you guys to watch, and hopefully enjoy and maybe learn some stuff and go from there. So shout out to my family for a beautiful weekend wedding and everything, and my wife made me shave again today, so that'll make her happy. So I guess at this point, let me go ahead and show that welding video, and we can then talk about what we saw in the video and stuff like that. So let me switch that to there. All right, so I just want to show some welding tips that I do. First of all, I have an adjustable torch tip. I got this from Amazon. You can get them all over the place, but you can see it swivels anywhere you want, and you just lock it down. That works out really well. And I use a Furic FUPA 12 cup. And the nice thing about this is it has a good screen inside of it, and being it's a large cup like this, I can hang the tungsten out quite a bit. And I use the blue tungsten, and rule of thumb is whatever the width of the cup is, that's how far you can use the stick out on your tungsten. So that works out really good. I use 1/16 tungsten and 1/16 filler rod.
On the chat that they can hear this video?
Another nice thing to keep your FUPA cup from breaking is I use a magnetic torch mount. But the biggest thing I wanted to show you, everybody, is Solar Flux Type B. This can, I'm sure, looks pretty nasty and everything. Well, that is at least 20 years old. And what you do is you put some in a container like this, and you add alcohol, you mix it up and get it kind of a slurry, something that's thick but still runny. And then what you do is, once you get it where you want it, you just put it on the inside of the torch, and it should get that kind of consistency on your end of your pipe. And what that'll do is, while you're welding, if you're not back purging with an inert gas like argon, the oxides the air will attack the stainless, and you'll get some horrific
oxides on the back of the part, and the part will fail, more than likely. So I use this all the time building headers and stuff, and it works awesome. So we'll go ahead and do that. And I wanted to show you a couple other little things. How I've always worked on on welding pipe together. I would use blue tape like this with one gap. I'd put a spot here, then slowly roll the tape off, putting a tack, so I get like 3 to 4 tacks on the pipe. It's worked well. A lot of times you can burn the tape, and then that kind of leaves a funky residue on the tubing. But the problem I had a lot of times, if you're a piece of straight like that, it's not a big deal. You set it on the bench, and it's not going to separate. But when you're welding 90s and 45s and pie cuts and stuff together, it just doesn't hold the product, hold the tubing tight. So I just got these. This is from ICE Engine Works, and it's a clamp for welding, for clamping 2 pieces of material together, and that's what it looks like. And the nice thing about this is obviously you can tighten these down and it'll pinch the tubing, but it's got this arm on here, so you can actually slide it out like that and grab 2 pieces of odd shapes and get them clamped in where they hold together. Or you can do a piece of straight like that, and you have a small gap here where you can put your tack welds. Once you get your tack welds, you can remove this and go ahead and weld it up. So let me go ahead and do our 2.5-inch pieces that have the solar flux on. And I'm gonna do this 3-inch piece with no purge and no solar flux, so we can compare the two. I'm doing a 3-inch so you can see the contamination a little better. So I'm gonna put the ICE clamp on the 2.5, and then we'll get welding. Okay, so now I have the clamp mounted on one side, and you can see that I've left enough material here to center the area where it's gonna be tacked in the middle of the clamps. So now I'll stick the other side in. All right, so now I have both pieces of pipe in, and the nice thing is you've got like a crossbar there, and you got the crossbar up here. So you can work them and twist them until you get a very tight seam. And now it's gonna hold together, it's not gonna come apart, and we can tack it, and we don't have to worry about the pipes falling out on the bench. So now let's go ahead and get set up, and we will weld these. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tack the stainless piece with no gas. One tack, peel it back, another tack, peel some more tape back, now we'll do another tack, and now we'll do our last tack. Okay, so let's go ahead and weld around this piece a bit here. I'm using a 45 thousandths 308 rod. Now, one thing you want to do is when you start and stop a weld, you always want to back up like 2 puddles and restart your weld. That way you won't burn through, and you can make it very seamless. When you're done, you won't even be able to tell where you started and stopped. The other thing is I'm allowing the gas to stay over the weld puddle until the gas stops. That keeps the contamination out of the piece. See if I can get my finger out of the way so you can see actually the weld pattern. Just get your puddle and then you start just following it with a dipping. I'm welding probably with about 75, 78 amps and probably about half throttle on the pedal. And we're getting close to all the way around. Up to another tack. Yep, about a quarter way to go. One last spot. Slowly let off the pedal so you don't create a divot. Okay, so that one is done. I don't know if you can see in there, but there's a lot of oxides. Once this cools off, we'll go ahead and cut it in half. So now we're going to do the piece with the solar flux on it. Start off with tacks. We need a little filler on that one. All right, so now that we have it tacked, we'll remove our ICE tack clamps. All right, so we'll weld this piece up now with the solar flux. Remember to keep the gas over the weld till it stops. Start back about 2 dips back from the end where you stopped. Dropping dots here.
I usually go over to starting weld a little bit and then just slowly ease the torch back so we don't have an undercut.
So there's the piece welded with the solar flux. I kind of rushed the weld a little bit, but you can see it's pretty clean. Has good bluish gold color into it, as does this one. This is the one without the solar flux. I went a little slower with that one, so it's got a little bit more gold color to it. So we'll let these two pieces cool off. We'll cut them in half, and then we'll look and see what the insides look like. Okay, so after we let the tubing cool down, we cut it in half, and you can see here that without any back gassing or without the solar flux, there's a lot of porosity and mess with the with not having anything back there. This is not a very good part. I don't know if you can see, but you can see that there's actually it's actually coming through the tubing. This is a fairly thick piece of stainless. Now here is the piece with solar flux, and you can see the flux that didn't burn off, and then in the joint the heat made it make a pocket where the oxygen was kept away from the material, and that's what leaves this shiny residue there. There's no oxidation in that joint at all. I don't know if I can get any closer to you. There we go. You can see there's no oxidation. Go back to this piece, and you can see that's terrible. Now I took a wire brush and cleaned it, cleaned the one with solar flux, and you can see that it's welded, basically welded on the inside. That flux allowed the metal to cure and created an inert pocket over top of the weld point. So that made a pocket over the weld point. So now that's a great piece of tubing. Now, I've had that stuff for like 20 years, so I went to their website and found a little history on it. It actually was made by a exhaust manufacturer for airplanes during World War II, like in 1941, and it was held as a military secret for multiple years till after World War II was over. And then they started using it for other welding industries. They say on the site that it's an X-rayable weld, so that's how good the weld joint becomes. It can actually be X-rayed, and it's as good as an inert back gas, but way easier to use. You don't have any gas waste. You don't have to worry about purging. And if you have like a whole header tube that has 5 joints in it, you either have to tape them all up or whatever to try to get all the argon to stay in the tube while you're welding it. Where with this, you just do each joint as you're putting it together, and as long as you don't drop the pipe and knock all the stuff loose, it'll be there till you're ready to weld it. I've had pipes that have had it for 2-3 weeks until I got back to it, and it was fine. So show again, you can see on this one there's no buildup. It's smooth as the metal joint itself. And again, we go back to this one, and you can see there's all kinds of craters. That one, here's the other one. That one I wire brushed, but there's one, and it's all full of craters and stuff. So just something I learned. It makes header building and exhaust building way easier and a lot less material waste. And for the home guy, you don't have to have 2 bottles of argon and all this other stuff for that one job that you're going to do that one time. Use this stuff and you're good to go whenever you need it. Like I said, I've built a lot of headers and stuff, and actually and exhaust systems over the years, and 2 of these has lasted 20 years. So, you know, money well spent. Anyway, hope this helps out. See ya. All right, so I just want to show some
All right, so let's try that. I'm sorry, you guys. I really messed up with the video tonight. So, a couple things that we can that you probably couldn't pick up in the video is that piece of the 3-inch tubing that I welded without the solar flux. The weld was actually dug into the tubing a little bit. It didn't puddle up on the top. It was kind of caving in because it's falling through the other side. And the inside of the tubing was really rough and porous, where with the solar flux it was very smooth. And what I showed a minute ago was, here's a piece that's on a turn, and you can see the joint's nice and tight, and the clamp holds it together really well. These were always problems doing connections like this with the masking tape. The weight of the tubing would cause it to separate while I'm putting the tack welds on it. So it just never worked out well. So I found those ICE Engine Works pieces, and it works out really well. I will put I'll put this stuff on the description of this video of the live chat after we're done. It takes about 20 hours for YouTube to let me edit it because it's still in process. But once it's done, I'll get the solar flux link and the link for the clamps on there, as well as the pivoting head and the cups. I don't know if any of you guys have used any of those cups, but they're really good. Nice if you got a roll bar joint that's really tight. You can stick the electrode out really far so you can get down in that joint and make a tight weld. The other thing is, even when you're welding flat stuff, you can pull the tip out and you can see what you're welding rather than having the cup blocking your view. Now, they do make those in clear glass also, Pyrex glass. The only problem with those is I break them all the time. So I prefer this this white one because it seems to be a lot more robust. I've dropped it a couple times and still's hung in there. So glad to do that. So I don't know if anybody had any other questions on that video. I'm glad the sound was good. For some reason, I had no sound, so I wasn't sure if it was coming out to you guys. I've been really bad about the microphone and the sound bars tonight. I've been messing with them, and that's been messing me up. But anyway, so hopefully that you guys got something out of that. Let me know if any of you guys have used the big cups before, or if you've used any of that stuff, or if any of that stuff looks like it might be something that'll give you a hand. I'm probably going to clean that video up just a little bit more and add some text to it, and we'll probably produce that, send that out since I already got it edited. So hopefully that works out. I keep burning tungsten. How do you prevent that? So when you mean burning the tungsten, is it melting off, or are you sticking it in the puddle? With one of the issues is getting a good gas cone over your weld joint. So the gas coming out of your torch is not only keeping porosity out of your weld, it's also keeping the tungsten cool. So you have to have enough flow for that. Now, when I would run the old pink, I don't know what they're made out of, I always call them volcanic rock, but whatever the pink cups, you got to run about 20 on your flow gauge. And with the Furic cups, or any of those big glass cups, you have to run about 35 pounds. So John says he's melting it. That could be maybe too small of tungsten for the amperage you're running. So kind of a rule of thumb is you want the tungsten and your filler rod to be a tick smaller than the material you're welding on, or right about the same thickness. So like on those pipes, that was I think it was like 12 gauge or 14 gauge stainless. So I was running a 1/16 cup, and I was using a 45 thousandths filler. Now, it also might be the type of tungsten you're using. So in the video I mentioned I had blue stripe tungsten. There's red, green, orange, brown, blue. There's a whole stream of it. You could Google tungsten bits or color chart, and they'll go down the list. I've found old school, when I learned how to TIG weld, we used red for steel and stainless, and green for aluminum. Now, you know, all these years later, I'm not going to say how many, but all these years later, now they have a bunch of different colors out there, and the blue seems to be pretty universal. So with the blue, I've run both all your steel alloys and your aluminum alloy. One thing I will do is I grind my tungsten to a point, a sharp point, when I'm welding steel or any kind of carbon, titanium, steel, chromoly, stainless. And you always want the grinder marks to go down the tungsten. So if your tungsten is shaped, like this, the grinder markings have to be this way. So one thing I didn't show in that video, maybe I'll add that to it, is I have a tungsten grinder. For years I just used a disc grinder and spun them on a disc grinder. The thing is, for really clean welds, you got to use a new sanding disc every time, because if it's been ground on rust or any other kind of metal, say you're going to weld some stainless and you have a sanding disc that's had steel or aluminum on it, well, it'll contaminate the tungsten before you even start welding. So now I use a tungsten grinder, which I got from on Amazon. I think it was, I don't know, $35 or something like that. And it actually has a diamond wheel, very similar wheel to what you would use for filing rings. And it only gets used for sharpening tungsten, so it doesn't get contaminated. So you want to have the grind marks going the direction of your tungsten. You want it to go down to a very fine point. When you're welding aluminum, what I do is I take a steel block on my table, and I put the TIG welder on DC, and I'll strike an arc for just a second or two and then shut it off. And what that'll do is because the amperage is going backwards, it actually puts a ball on the end of the tungsten, and then I use that for welding aluminum. Now, on aluminum, I will melt the tungsten sometimes, because I a lot of times use too small tungsten, and I have it outside the tip of the cup too far. And when I'm welding aluminum, I don't use that Furic cup. I use a really tiny cup, a regular pink style cup. So I'd have to see what you're doing, John, with yours that are melting, but I would say it's either going to be not enough gas flow, or you're not getting a good stream. So I don't have a chart or anything, but when you use just a regular cup and your regular tungsten or your regular TIG torch, the gas kind of comes out quick. So you go to a glass lens, and you'll have an extra filter, a screen there that kind of slows it down. And then when you go to like the Furic, now you've got 3 screens. So the argon comes out of the TIG torch and goes through 3 screen meshes before it comes out of the cup end. What that does is, even though we're running more flow, it makes a big slow speed cloud over the weld puddle, which keeps the tungsten cool. You could see I had the tungsten out on that weld pretty darn good. I had it out about 1 inch, and the tungsten would get red or glow orange, but it wouldn't burn. So that's probably something to do with gas flow, or you're just over ampering it. What John, when you melt the tungsten, what color tungsten do you use? What's the diameter, and how many amps are you running on it? That'd probably be a good starting point for me helping you figure out what you're doing with it. But that hopefully was some useful information. For years and years and years, I refused the back gas because it took another argon bottle, another regulator, and then you had to use aluminum foil or tape or plugs or whatever you could to cap the tubing that you're welding. And I found that I just wasted a lot of argon, because I would, like, if doing a header, I may have 4 or 5 joints. Well, I'll have it all tacked. I tack all of them till it's a complete tube, head to collector, and then I go back and I weld them all up, because I want it to, I want all the tacks to be good and stuff like that. So when you got 4 or 5, gaps and weld joints on there, and they're not taped, the argon's just going out. It's just a big mess. So I found, like I said, about 20 something years ago, I found this solar flux and started using it, and man, it works great. You don't have to do all that other stuff. And I didn't look on the website, but I mean, a can's very minimal amount of money, and you do that and you're done. You don't have to worry about it. So hopefully that gives you guys some help if you're going to do some stainless welding. I make a lot of coolant lines and all kinds of things out of stainless, so I use it quite often, headers and collectors and exhaust and all that stuff for sure. So yeah, so that works out real good. So I don't know if it came up on the thread, but lost all my money, put on the text about building the 4200. Yes, we talked about it last show. There's actually the last two shows, I showed some short videos on, one was on the cylinder head doing the valve adjustments, and then the second one was just a collage of different aspects of putting the short and long block together. So that motor is for Leo Santucci's Studebaker, which in that video you could see it in the background. It's kind of a teal and white Studebaker, and we're shooting to be the world's fastest 4200 with that thing. We've been 804 with the car in the past and always had some engine issues. We aren't using that engine builder anymore, mainly because they died from COVID, but we decided to I decided to help Leo out and take the engine program on myself, and we found a bunch of issues, and I think we got them all straightened out. Those will all come out in the video that I'm going to release later this week, and we're going to get the motor in the car probably next week, and we'll put together a video putting the car together, and we're going to go to the dyno and dyno it, and then October 15th we're going to Bradenton for Run Day Sunday, and we'll make some hits on this thing. So check out the channel. There's I think it's on the live and on or in automotive tips and tricks. There's a couple of videos of the teardown when we disassembled the engine and dissected all the things it had. And then I think in events page there's a video of the car running, and then there's some shorts that have it. So any of the ones that you see, the 4200 or any of that stuff in there, you could probably even do a 4200 on the main page as a search, and it'll probably come up with a couple of the videos. So you can check out where we were, and I'll be releasing that video soon to let you know where we're at now. John says, I've used 1/16, also tried purple. I've never tried the purple. It'd be interesting. I have to look and see on the chart what they say about that. The blue seems to be really robust. I mean, I've gotten, had to torch the tungsten red and set it down. Didn't use my my holder, and the tungsten actually bent. And I saw a Instagram page, one of these guys that does all this trick welding, and he would actually manipulate the tungsten, make it glow, and then manipulate the shape for welding different projects. So and then he always used blue also. And since I've used the blue, you could tell in the welds with that good gas coverage, you get a lot of purples and golds and bronze colors in the weld, which to me that's saying that, you know, it's got a good gas coverage and oxygen or air is not getting into the weld puddle and contaminating it. So I think that works out really good. Mike's on. Patriot Grease Monkey. Are most of the race parts for 4200 one-off parts, and are they actually performance parts? Yeah. So like guys like Calvin, which I have a shout out to Calvin on the main page on the community section. Calvin has been racing stock engines, junkyard motors, pulled out of the junkyard, cleaned up, changed oil, put fresh spark plugs in, and raced them. And he's made 830 wheel horsepower with a junkyard engine. So that gives me big hope, because on Leo's engine, this thing's got, you know, aluminum small block rods in it. It's got JE custom built pistons. We have crane competition cams, custom ground cams with almost a half inch of lift. You know, it's got all these big race parts, you know, aftermarket sleeves, welded deck, so it's a dry deck, and we haven't done much more than what Calvin's done. So now that I've been inside the engine, I've seen what we have to work with. We're gonna get after it now. So when this motor was originally designed by Self Racing, the guys that were doing the maintenance, they built it for drag and drive. So it was originally in a early Chevy 2 wagon, and they ran the very first, I think, the 2005 drag week, and 5 races and 2,000 miles in between. So I think they kind of were didn't get too crazy with that engine. Unfortunately, after that, once Leo bought it, we started running into a lot of durability issues. So I don't know what the cause of that was. Unfortunately, all those engines that came apart or had issues went back to Self. They repaired them and really didn't give us much information, because they were comp eliminator racers, and those guys are very secretive about all the stuff they do to them. But I can tell you all the valve train parts are Jessel in our motor, are Jessel, and they're all basically Ecotech parts. So the 4-cylinder Ecotech and the 5-cylinder, it's in the Canyon, and the 6-cylinder, it's in the Trailblazer Envoy, all have the same valve train components. So those are all the same part. They're basically just the same engine with 1 cylinder removed or 2 cylinders removed, 6 to 4 or 6 to 5. So we're still running a stock crank in our motor. It looks like it has been nitrated. They knife edged it. They cut the rod journals way down on it. Not necessarily sure it needed that, but that's what they did. So we're gonna see how we can make this work now. I don't know why I answered one of these things and it didn't. Oh, I see why. Hang on one second. I made my my comment too big. All right. So yeah, so I was trying to see what was going on with the. I had a text there or a comment, and it wouldn't answer. I kept looking over it. Sorry about that. So yeah, Mike. So to answer your question, yes, most of these parts are one-off race parts. Now there is a company, I think it's M-Tech or something. M-Tech was making rear sump oil pans for the 6-cylinder. They're basically, and a lot of guys are making them themselves. They're taking a 5-cylinder pan, cutting it, and sectioning it off. Schaefer Camshafts is making a reground cam that they made with the help of Calvin Nelson, and then of course Comp can regrind them also, but they're using stock cam and they're regrinding them. all the cam gears and all that stuff on our engine are all handmade. So that's going to be a trick piece there. There is a company in Australia that's making a cast stainless turbo manifold for these motors now, and from my understanding, the fitment was in a Trailblazer. So with their manifold, you should be able to put a turbocharger on a Trailblazer and make it fit. I don't know how much, the coolant reservoir and air cleaner and all that stuff probably have to be removed, but it does fit pretty well. Calvin's used that manifold on a couple of his. He's got a wagon that he's got it on, and so that's had to be some modifications onto it. I'm trying to think what else. JE has made pistons, so I mean they've got some of the specs for the pistons. Rings are what they are. I mean the rings that I just put in Leo's motor are Hellfire rings, but they're made for a Toyota. So it's just one of those things. A lot of this stuff you can get from something else and retrofit. I think on Calvin's channel, he got pistons from shelf pistons off of another engine that he had to cut the top of the piston down a little bit, and he was using a steel rod that somebody's making. I forget who that was. I'd have to look at his channel again, but there is somebody making a connecting rod for these. So I mean, the parts are getting more and more out there. So I definitely want to build a hot rod or a rat rod or something with the engine. I think the engine's really cool. It makes a lot of power, a lot of torque, and they're cheap. I mean, right now you can get them in a junkyard for a couple $100. So that's always a good thing. So yeah, so that would be it with that. The balancer, we use an Innovate West balancer. The part number is a 104A, which is a big block, but it's got the proper shank on it to go on our crankshaft, and I believe it's really close to a LS. I know the crank bolt is an LS bolt, and I think my crank hub that I used to mount the degree wheel to the front of it was one I had from another engine, and I just had to clean it up in the lathe a little bit. So that crank snout is a common crank snout. Now there is some flywheels and flex plates for them, but one of the only issues with them is you have to get a bell housing adapter to run like a Turbo 400 or something like that. Yeah, Mike says they seem to be grossly detuned. Yeah, and you probably didn't hear on one of my earlier lives that engine was actually originally engineered in 1995, and GM ran multiple Baja 1000s with that engine as an experimental engine and finished every race, and they were making big horsepower with them and stuff. If you go to the wiki and put in Atlas 4200, there's a lot of interesting information about it. And it was funny that they took till 2002 to actually put it in a vehicle, but I guess the original thought was they were going to put it in the 1500 pickup trucks, but it required specific brackets and stuff, accessory brackets, and it was easier for them to just stay with the V6 that used all the V8 brackets, and so it ended up being cost prohibitive to put it in those vehicles. And then when they came out with the Trailblazer Envoy platform, I guess in that chassis it worked better having that. I think the frame configuration is, I think the V6 was probably a little tight in there, so they decided to go with that engine. So good for us. Unfortunately, it's a shame that they didn't use that motor in more vehicles, but there's plenty of 5s out there, and there's plenty of 6s in the junkyard. I mean, they're getting to the age now where they're starting to show up in the junkyard. So I know my wife's got one in her car. I've been wanting to turbocharge it forever, but it's her daily, so I'll probably leave it alone. So but yeah, so that's the big stuff for tonight. We had the welding video. John says he's going to try some of the tricks I told him, so hopefully, John, let us know how that works out for you. And if you need to borrow some flux, solar flux, come on by. I know you're local, so if you want to come by and try some out, you're more than welcome to stop by. I'll give you some. But so next week we're gonna hopefully have the engine in the 4200 in. Depends how much I get done. I gotta get this exhaust done on this Camaro, and all the parts. I have a whole pile of parts came in when I was out of town, so now I got a bunch of work to get done. So it's gonna take up a bunch of the time, but we'll see what we're gonna do. For people that came in late, I just want to reiterate that on the main page, the main YouTube channel page for Landis Performance, there's a bunch of tabs on there, and one of the tabs is community. Under the community tab, I have polls and ask a bunch of different questions about things you'd like to see in videos and stuff like that. How the start time was for tonight, if we should change it to even later, and things like that. So please, stop by when you get a chance. Answer a couple of the polls. That way I get a better understanding what's going to work better for everybody. And next week, I promise we're going to have project updates on the video of the vehicles in the shop. So I'm going to work on that probably on Monday. So that way I have tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, Saturday to get a bunch of stuff accomplished, so that Monday I have some stuff to show you guys, and we'll go over that stuff next week. And hopefully I'll have the 4200 engine assembly video out by the weekend. I'm not going to say Friday, I'm going to say by the weekend. And if you guys enjoyed that welding video, I may just go ahead and make a couple adjustments on it and put that out also. I think there's some good useful information. Let me know what you guys think about that. And it's a bear to R&R motor and Trailblazer. Yeah, I bet it is. You probably have to take the core support and everything apart. That motor's stuffed in there. And it's funny because people are stuffing these engines in all kinds of cars. I've seen some Fox bodies with it. On Facebook, there's a 4200 swap group on there. And, I mean, there's guys, BMWs, pickup trucks, obviously. There's a couple in old 50s Chevrolet cars. I think Ryan, it's on the chat here. He wants to put one in a 3100 truck and make it all-wheel drive, which I think would be awesome. So it's becoming a popular engine, and Calvin's making his mission, and I'm going to try to help him out that we let everybody know about these things, and everybody can get into them and make them work. There's a couple issues with using Holley on them with the VVT, so that could be one of the hang-ups. I know Calvin has used quite a few different ECUs on his different builds. I think he has one running with a Holley on it and one running with a Pro Max, I think, and one with the Gold Box, not micro, Mega Squirt. Excuse me. So that's just depends if you want to really run the VVT or not. It's only on the exhaust cam, so I mean we'll broaden the power range. My suggestion is put big cams in it and then don't care about the VVT. But Mike said about comparable to the Toyota 2JZ. Well, the 2JZ actually has a lot more support. So I mean, there's guys that have been racing them things forever. And I know when I was racing Pro Mod, Titan and out of Orlando was running in the Nopi series, and they were running back in the day. They were running some 640s, I think, with theirs, but they were changing the engine every run because they would tear it up enough that it'd be easier to switch engines than it was to repair the engine between rounds. So they would just, they'd go to an event. Of course, the Nopi events, they would only have 2 or 3 qualifiers, and it was only 2 or 3 rounds of eliminations because they only had a small car count. So, I mean, 6 engines in 3 days wouldn't be that bad for them. They just have them all built and stocked up in the trailer. So, but now, of course, they've got billet blocks and all kinds of aftermarket accessories for them. And there's some guys that are really making some big power with them. So, I don't know if we'll get there with the 4200, but it's definitely a good platform. The 06 up have a better cylinder head. I will mention that. These motors that we're running are from 2002, 2003. And you can tell that when you're in the junkyard because the early motor has a plastic black valve cover, and the engine with the bigger flowing cylinder head has an aluminum cast valve cover. But there's like 3 different crankshaft designs with how many triggers, and everybody's under the impression that the early crank, the 2002 to 2004 crank, which is a 12 throw crank, is the best crank of all of them to use. So there's depending on what ECU you're going to run, there's some issues with mixed matching parts and stuff like that. But the information's out there. Go on that 4200 Facebook page. There's some good information. People ask a lot of questions on there. Of course, you get guys that are newbies that are asking the not so qualified questions, but it doesn't matter. I mean, we're all learning at the same time. So anyway, so I think we've run the hour now, and it looks like we had some pretty good views on here, and looks like we had a bunch of people on. I was glad to see it. We had the chat was active tonight. I love that. So I think at that point we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. Like I said, go to the views to the go to the community page and click on the polls and answer the polls and give me some idea of what we want to do in the future. And Ryan says he'd be that newbie. We are all that newbie, trust me. I had to do a lot of quick learning when I started taking this one apart. Yeah, so it's all good. That's what I wanted this channel for, so we can have a place we can all learn and go from there. I lost my screen here, so I apologize again about the sound problems we had tonight. That's on me, and that's it is what it is. I'm learning in process. I'm a newbie here, just like everything else. So I lost all my controllers here on the screen. So I don't want to X out because I don't want to go till it's wrapped up. But see if I can figure this out. All right, so we'll go ahead and wrap up tonight. Let me know about the time, if that was a good time, and answer the polls, and I will see everybody next Tuesday. Look for the new videos coming out, and we'll see you then. See ya!